As many of you listen, remember this guy and this guy. This is Trump calls Dr. Fauci an idiot and disaster. And after, wasn't too long, you didn't see Fauci. You didn't see, or he defunded the WHO and stuff like that. I have friends, used to be my friends, that thought they were my friends, but evidently they were fair of the friends because they know my news channel, but they didn't subscribe because they didn't like what I had to say about what they were thinking. But people have a problem with the coin that was done for President Trump. It's that one right there. Right there. But as you can see, there are coins there's one with John F. Kennedy. I don't know, it looks like an Indian or something right there. See what that is. Egypt pound. A Statue of Liberty. That one there. I don't know, but there's one John F. Polk. There's John F. Kennedy. There's one Obama did. Thomas Jefferson, Abe Lincoln. I think that's the Queen right there. I think I can't remember who. It might have been the black woman. Tubman, I believe that's what it was, that he did one. There's a traitor right there. Just because a person has a coin that's made him does not make him evil. Obama did it, they all did it. I mean, you might say they're all bad, maybe so, but we don't know that unless we get right down to the root of it. So, we will go to, not that one. This is what the Biden administration with the migrants. 87 million, no bid, migrant housing contract under fire probably. Is Biden, yeah, he's spending money on him. He's giving them money to do it. Yet he says to hell with the Cubans. We'll show you why in a minute. Millions of illegal immigrants to get 4.3 billion. Yeah, and they won't even do nothing about it. They won't even tell people about what's going on down there or not. And here is something very interesting. Now we get into the meat of the story. Excel High School office, 100% online. So this is the Zionist Communist Takeover of America, 45 Declared Goals by Jeff Frentz, April 24th, 2018. On January 10th, 1963, the House of Representatives and later the Senate began reviewing a document entitled Communist Goals for Taking Over America. It's contained an agenda of 45 separate issues, attacks, and techniques that in hindsight were quite shocking then and equally stunning today. Over the last 50 years since the list was introduced in the House, many things have changed. Among them, the Soviet Union is gone and communism isn't mentioned by the controlled MSM anymore. Why? Because the founders of the communism world, Zionism, is now the dominant force of the West in the Western world and controls virtually every major geopolitical, social, culture, and the commercial aspects of your existence. Most importantly, about 27 of the 45 communist Zionist goals in the original list have been or are being achieved. History has largely retired the other 8. The remaining 27 items will be or should be shock to you. It is essential, there's that word again, also understand that the Zionism created communism, took down Russia, set up the Soviet Union, and created 2 world wars in which over 100 million died. Whether the term is communist or Bolshevism or socialism or Marxism, they will all mandate from the source world of Zionism that must never be forgotten. So as you read through this list, understand and never forget that these goals, most now 100% implemented, are all Zionist goals. Hitler was a Zionist. Here in part are the most blamed Zionist communist achievements listed in that original list of 45 goals. Read the group very carefully. And these are the most sweeping, revolutionary, devastating, and deadly goals in a list from 1963. I will list original 45 further down the page. Here we go. Permit free trade. Who started free trade? Senior Bush. Permit free trade between all nations, regardless of communist affiliation and regardless of whether or not items could be used for war. Promote the UN, the only hope for mankind. Do away with all loyalty oaths. Capture one or both of the political parties. See, they couldn't get the other party. They got a few rhinos, but they couldn't get the other party. Capture one or both of the political parties in the United States. Use technical decisions of the courts to weaken basic American institutions by claiming their activities violate civil rights. Get control of the schools. Use them as transmission belts for socialism and current communist propaganda. Often the curriculum. Get control of teachers, associations, with the party line in textbooks. Yep. Gain control of all student newspapers. Use student riots to foment public protests against programs or organizations which are under communist attack. Infiltrate the press. Get control of the book review, assignments, editorial writings, policy making positions. Gain control of the key positions in radio, TV, and motion pictures. Continue discrediting American culture by disregarding all forms of artistic expression. An American communist cell was told to eliminate all good sculptures from parks and buildings. Sound familiar? Substitute shapeless, awkward, and meaningless forms. Control art critics and directors of art museums. Our plan is to control ugliness, repulsive, meaningless art. Eliminate all laws governing obscenity by calling them censorship and a violation free speech and the press. Break down cultural standards of morality by promoting pornography and obscenity in books, magazines, motion pictures, radio, and TV. Present homosexuality, degeneracy, and promiscuity normal, natural healthy. Discredit the Bible and emphasize the need for intellectual maturity, which does not need a religion crutch, which I've heard people say in California just recently. Eliminate prayer or any phrase of religion or any phrase of religious expression in the schools on the grounds that it violates the principle of separation church and state. Discredit the American Constitution by calling it inadequate, old-fashioned, out of step with modern needs, a hindrance to cooperation between nations on a worldwide basis. Discredit the American founding fathers, present them as selfish aristocrats who had no concern for common man, belittle all forms of American culture, and discourage the teaching of American history on the ground that it was only a minor part of the big picture. Give more emphasis to Russian history since the communists took over. Support any socialist movement to give centralized control over any part of the culture, education, social agencies, welfare programs, mental health clinics, etc. Infiltrate and gain control of big business. Transfer some of the powers of arrest from the police to social agencies. Treat all behavioral problems as psychiatric disorders which no one but psychiatrists can understand or treat. Dominate dominate the psychiatric profession and use mental health laws as a means of gaining coercive control over those opposed to communist goals. Discredit the family as an institution, encourage promiscuity and easy divorce, emphasize the need to raise children away from the negative influence of parents, which they're already trying to do, attribute prejudices, mental blocks, and retarding of children to suppressive influence of parents, create the impression that violence and insurrection are legitimate aspects of American tradition, that students and special interest groups should rise up and use united force to solve economic, political, or social problems. These are the key communist goals on the list and demonstrate clearly how America has been subverted and torn apart from the inside out. What did I tell you? You can see the entire original list of the 45 down below. A list that was centered into the congressional record in 1963. Okay, 46, import anti-white racists from the third world via an open borders policy, enforce their integration to divide and conquer white Western civilization in North America, feminize men and disarm both the citizenry and military, especially disarm white males. 1963, the year that changed America. Over the years, I have shared and debate a discussion regarding the current state of affairs in the U.S. and the changing social climate of the great nation. Since the baby boomer generation, society and its culture have been noticeably different than the way it was 50 years ago. From the late 50s to the 70s, a series of events took place, contributing to the way we are currently living. However, like anything else, there has to be a starting point which the wheels are put into motion. Sometimes it can be a single event, such as war, but more often it is a series of events, some international, some planned, others unpredictable. There is always pivotal point then, or when things begin to change. I believe that that time was 1963. I don't see it because I was like 50 years ago. I was almost an adult. I'm not freaking in my 70s. For my generation, some of the following will certainly stir old memories. If you were born later, this may serve as a brief history lesson into the time your parents traveled through. By 1963, television was the leading source of entertainment. the public enjoyed a different type of programming back then. Lessons on life could be viewed weekly on Leave It to Beaver or My Three Sons. There were heroes back then that never drew blood, Lone Ranger and The Adventures of Superman. Cartoon series involved such as the Flintstones and the Jetsons without messages of empowering the children using vulgarities or demeaning parental guidance. Families could spend a weekend evening watching Ed Sullivan, Bonanza, or Gunsmoke. For those who enjoyed thrill and suspense, we were blessed with Alfred Hitchcock Presents and The Twilight Zone, My Favorite Martian, Ozzie and Harriet, Donna Reed, and Sea Hunt. Also kept viewers entertained weekly. Movie theaters were not multiplex units within 15 units with 15 screens. Rather, theaters were individual, and there was one single giant big screen with adequate sound and hard seats without springs. Tom Jones had won the Academy Award for Best Picture, How the West Was Won, Cleopatra, Lily of the Fields, The Great Escape, The Birds, and It's a Mad World were all box office hits. See, I didn't know that one. By year's end, the Beatles had played for the British royal family and were laying the groundwork to conquer the U.S. Following years, Eric Clapton began his journey to fame with Jeff Beck, Jimmy Page, Jim McCoy, and their band. The Yardbirds out of the West Coast. The surf was beginning to rock and roll with the Beach Boys, and their first song to reach the top 10 list, Surfing USA. The joys of Jell-O recipes for quivering fluorescent foodstuff hit the stores. U.S. postal rates went up to 5 cents for the first ounce. AT&T produced touch-tone telephones. The Yankees played in the World Series again, but lost to the Dodgers in four straight. In four straight, the government and NASA began the Apollo program. This is just a brief snapshot of some of the things that were going on back in 1963. Remember, while some of these events played an important role in the direction of change that affect us today, many of them were lost to much greater, more political events that I believe put everything into motion. In 1963, the news media showed women burning their bras as the women's liberation movement took off with the blistering or the publishing of Feminine Mystique, Betty Friedan. Martin Luther King was jailed in April, and civil unrest was being throughout the forefront on August 28th. The media brought us live coverage of the March on Washington, D.C., Dr. King's famous "I Had a Dream" speech. The Cuban Missile Crisis found its way in our homes, and our nation was gearing up for conflict. I can see where that would bother somebody. By September of 1963, we had lost some very influential people. Pope John the 23rd, Robert Frost, and country legend Patrick Cline, to name a few. In the early hours of November 22nd, we learned of the quiet passing of C.S. Lewis, and hours later we were brought to our knees when President John F. Kennedy was assassinated, and our nation mourned. So you see, while long since forgotten, 1963 could very well have been one of the most important years since our founding fathers provided us with the Constitution of the United States, which brings me to one final and extremely important decision that was made during this most provocative year. On June 17, 1963, the U.S. Supreme Court included that the Bible reciting or prayer in public schools was deemed unconstitutional. While Americans have endured great prosperity over the past 40 years, we have also lost our moral compass and direction. In reviewing the research data supports 1963 as a focal point, demonstrating downward slope in our moral and social decline through 2001. Certainly one would have to agree that all of these events have had a profound impact on our way of current social structure has been changed. Personally, if I had to choose one specific event that has demonstrated the demoralization of our country, it would have to be the decision of the Supreme Court in June of 1963. But there is always hope. As always, I welcome your comments and can easily be reached. Okay, this is the original complete list of the 45 declared goals for the communist takeover of America. You're about to read a list of 45 goals that found their way down the halls of great capital back in 1963. As you read these 39 years later, you should be shocked by the events that have played themselves out. I first ran across the last list 3 years ago, but was unable to attain a copy, and it was bothered me over since. Recently, Jeff Rintz posted it on his site, and I would like to thank him for doing so. Okay, here's the list. U.S. acceptance of existence as the only alternative to atomic war. U.S. willingness to capitulate in preference to engaging in atomic war. Develop the illusion that total disarmament by the United States would be demonstration of moral strength. Permit free trade between all nations, regardless of communist affiliation and regardless of whether or not items could be used for war. Now, I was telling you that Trump tried to stop that, what Bush did, and he wasn't invited to his funeral. Extension of long-term loans to Russia and Soviet satellites. Provide American aid to all nations, regardless of communist dominations. Grant recognition of Red China, admission of Red China to the UN. Set up East and West Germany as separate states in spite of Khrushchev's promise in 1955 to settle his German question by free elections under supervision of the UN. Prolong the conferences to ban atomic tests because the United States agreed to suspend tests as long as negotiations are in progress. Allow all Soviet satellites individual representations in the UN. Promote the UN as the only hope for mankind if its charter is rewritten. Demand that it is to be set up as a one world government with its own independence, armed forces. Some communist leaders believe the world can be taken over as easily by the UN as by Moscow. Sometimes these two centers compete with each other as they now doing in the Congo. Resist any attempt to outlaw the Communist Party. Do away with loyalty oaths. Continue giving Russia access to the U.S. Patent Office. Capture one or both of the political parties in the United States. Use technical decisions of the courts to weaken basic American institutions by claiming their activities violate civil rights. Get control of the schools. Use them as transmission belts or socialism and current communist propaganda. Soften the curriculum. Get control of teachers' associations with the party line textbooks. Gain control of all student newspapers. Use student riots to former public protests against against programs or organizations which are under communist attack. Infiltrate the press. Get control of the book review assignments, editorial writing, policy making positions. Gain control of key positions in radio, TV, and motion pictures. Continue discrediting American culture by disregarding all forms of artistic expression. And American Communist cell was told to eliminate all good sculpture from parks and buildings. Substitute shapeless, awkward, and meaningless forms. Control art critics. Eliminate all laws governing obscenity by calling them censorship and violation of free speech and free press. It goes on, and it's the same as the other. But I'll leave a little link for you to follow on that. But I thought that was interesting and need to be done. And then we got this one up there. It says, this is the Legal Information Institute. Crimes Against Humanity. Crimes against humanity refers to the category of crimes against international law, which includes the most egregious violations of human dignity, especially those directed toward civilian populations. The modern understanding of the crimes against humanity is codified in the founding statutes of the International Criminal Tribunals, including the International Criminal Tribunals for the former Yugoslav and the International Criminal Court, ICC. As codified Article 7 of the ICC statute, the following acts are punishable as crimes against humanity when perpetrated by a state actor as part of a systemic or widespread attack against the civilian population: murder, extermination, deportation or forcible transfer, false imprisonment, torture, rape, sexual slavery, or enforced sterilization, ethnic persecution, disappearance, apartheid, other inhumane acts of a similar character intentionally causing great suffering or serious injury to body or to mental or physical health. The intent requirement for liability is knowledge of the attack. So I probably will get a strike, but I guess, that's the way it goes. So anyway, I want to leave that with you, and I will leave the links, and want to say God bless, and I believe God sees us and hears us. And the other day when the lightning struck, kind of showed us that he did. So anyway, Jesus loves you, and I care about each and every one of you. Thank you. God bless.